Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First of all, are you comforted with WHO's affirmation of the fact that Africa seems to be managing this fairly well? Well, Africa has the lowest number of cases and lowest number of mortalities. Is that something comforting to you, or is it something that we should suspect?
Yeah, going by the figures that we have, I think we are not doing badly. So it goes to confirm that we planned ahead and we're able to manage the situation so far.
So, but then there's also that clinical test of clinical trial of those medications that the WHO stopped, but NAFDAC, Nigeria's own NAFDAC, is insisting we need to go ahead with it. Do you see that as a conflict, or do you think it is something that is also medically okay?
Yeah, we have we have a textbook that we use in internal medicine that dates back to 2010. It actually describes the mechanism of action of chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine against coronavirus. But you know, this is a newer version, a newer strain of that coronavirus, and a lot of studies being undertaken on it. So we do know for a fact that chloroquine actually prevents the first step in the mechanism of pathogenesis of coronavirus, and that it prevents the entering of the virus into the cell. So I think it is too early to stop those trials. And for a fact that we have been using chloroquine for decades, and we have been able to overcome most of the side effects. So I think it's too early to stop. So we should proceed further to do further, because what they have gotten is just from one section of the world. So I think it's too early to stop it.
That also be responsible for the difference in position or opinion of Nigeria's NAFDAC and the WHO. The fact that some medications, for instance, chloroquine, is something that's age-long in Africa in the treatment of malaria. And of course, Africa is known, to have handled so many more cases of malaria than any other continent in the world. Could that be a reason, part of the reason for the low number of cases that Africa is dealing with as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
Yeah, there are a number of factors that need to be put together and confirmed. We talked about the high temperature. We talked about the endemicity of malaria, and then tuberculosis, and most of the drugs that we have been using. So there are quite a lot of factors that are contributing. Don't forget also the age, because our average age here is 40 to 45, and compared to what we have in all other centers where we are having high mortality, where they seem to have the aged, and those are the kind of people that the disease itself have higher impact on. So there are quite a lot of factors to consider here.
Yes, those factors, I mean, a lot of people have talked about them, but when it comes to science, I mean, having scientific basis, I mean, we could talk about a lot of factors. Which of these factors are actually founded in firm, data, in firm science, beyond the conjectures that we have heard? Which of them are actually for real, if I could use that term?
I think for now is the age, because the deaths that we have recorded so far, they are usually the aged and those with underlying illnesses. I think that is the major factor that is playing its role here so far.
Okay, now let's talk about Nigeria's way of handling this, the projections we're seeing. And we talked about the WHO's statement saying that, well, Africa is not doing too badly. But when you also hear the Commissioner for Health in Lagos saying we have not peaked yet. The Minister of Health also saying we have not gotten to our peak. And then we hear statements like, well, we are doing good. Is there a concern here that maybe this is just the early phases and things might even spike moving forward? Is there that concern? And how do we rally round to sort that?
Yeah, but our mortality is low compared to some other centers. So that's a good sign. But the number of tests that we are doing is not enough. And then I think the authorities are doing all that they can to increase the testing rate.
Okay. Now, talking about the lockdown, the easing of the lockdown, we're getting to the end of this extended 2 weeks of the easing of the lockdown. And I recall when this was about to be extended beyond the first 2 weeks, there were issues of compliance, there were talks about communication, how people have bought into this fight against COVID-19, and of course, compliance follows after that, the number of tests we are planning to do and all that. So as we near the end of this extended phase, what do you see happening based on our performance in the past few days?
Yeah, like I said, we need to increase our tests because we are not maximizing the lockdown, to actually do a lot of tests. And a lot of factors are responsible for that. The capacity of the testing center and the availability of reagents. But to open the lockdown right now, I don't think it's advisable.
Okay, well, are you saying that we should extend this easing phase even further by another 2 weeks? Mind you, that will be an extra 2 weeks, by the way. Is that what you're saying? Or you're saying we should move to the next phase but still put the measures in place? What do you propose, basically?
Yes. First phase of the easing, you see the compliance really poor. So we really need time to imbibe the culture of, social distancing, hand washing, and interstate travel. So there are a lot of things that mitigate against the expected result of the lockdown. And so if you ease it further, I'm sure a lot of people that have doubt that the coronavirus pandemic exists, further just tell them that there's really nothing there, that is all politics. So we still need time to understand
For Doctor, do we need it? Well, you've talked about us ramping up the testing. You've also talked about the low compliance with the lockdown guidelines that were given. What's the assurance we have that if we extend the lockdown, this phase of the lockdown, people will comply? So you have emphasized the need for us to increase testing. But one of the things that the PTF COVID-19 has also said is that they are already concerned about the increasing number of tests, increasing number of positive cases of COVID-19 in the country, because if it increases a little too much, it could overwhelm the system. So if we were to extend this lockdown, what should we be doing? What have we missed doing that you think that an extension would address and will not make worse the already bad issue of poor compliance with the regulations?
Yeah, it's to address those who are concerned with enforcing those guidelines, so that people can be forced to comply, and then increasing the testing. We still need to extend the test centers across the country, and then the publicity to mobilize Nigerians to come out for testing.
Let's talk about the performance of the various states, 34 of them, as well as the FCT, making 35 territories in all in Nigeria. How would you assess the way the states themselves? Of course, you can see these figures now, the various states and then the number of tests that they have conducted. How would you assess the handling of this pandemic by the various states and territories in Nigeria?
Yes, they are doing the best they can. Don't forget that we didn't have all these facilities right from the beginning. So it's a gradual process. And we need time to expand and to be able to cover a larger ground. Some of those tests, some of those centers that have a high figure, we need to increase more testing there. And for states that claim that they do not have, positive cases, there are other ways you can go around it. Perhaps you can do antibody tests for selected few to see whether it's actually, present in those areas.
It's that claim to not have any confirmed case of COVID-19. Of course, I know you're referring to Kogi and Cross River. And if you look at that breakdown from the NCDC of tests conducted, you see that Kogi was done just one test, Cross River 8. So basically, it ties back to what you were saying. But the big question usually is, when you say we need to do more in terms of testing, how do we achieve that? Because it seems as though we're not going the way of rapid test kits. It also seems we're not going the way of pooling. So how do we ramp up our test capacity?
Yeah, right now I think it's to pump in more resources so that they can get more reagents. Once they have more reagents, I think the capacity they have now will be able to do more. And then to go around to sensitize people and then screen people for testing. The issue with the rapid test is, we need to define the purpose of the testing. We are testing right now so that we're able to identify those of us who are shedding the virus. And that also explains why the process of collecting samples is directed at, taking the sample from the particular spots where the shedding, comes out, the nasopharynx and the oropharynx, compared to the rapid test where you take blood sample. We are not concerned about blood transmission right now. It is shedding. And so when you collect the sample then and you're able to identify those who are shedding, then you isolate them from the community. That is the purpose. So that's why we cannot be using, even if it is 100% sensitive and specific, we cannot afford to be using rapid test right now for that.
Well, just to clear the air, Kogi has recorded 2 cases according to figures released by the NCDC, the latest figures. So maybe, just maybe, this is as a result of the more tests that have been conducted in this state. But looking at you saying that reagents would maybe improve our testing capacity. We've heard time and again that we have a capacity of more than 2,000. But if you see the average number of tests we do per day, for example, the latest figures released show that we did 1,741 tests. The day before, we did 1,120 tests. So even with the capacity we have on ground right now, we are not doing as well. We're not using that capacity full-fledged. So what's the assurance, really? And I'd like you to maybe suggest, what are the things we need to do to ensure that we make use of that capacity optimally?
Yeah, it's to send people out for contact tracing and to screen. You can screen people by way of, cluster and, taking their temperature and taking their history. And those that meet the guideline, you collect small samples. If you wait in the lab, the samples are not going to come on their own. It's human beings that need to go out and, start for it. So it's to send people out and then also do public enlightenment.
This other issue of, perhaps some glimmer of hope from the NCDC in collaboration with a number of other agencies in Nigeria about the rapid test kit, the RNA Swift. From where you sit as a microbiologist and as a professional in this field, how effective do you see deploying that being in our quest to contain this virus?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
The NCDC, in collaboration with a number of other agencies in Nigeria, came up with this RNA Swift, a rapid test kit, and just in the quest to contain this virus. How effective do you see that being in all of the things that you have been talking about?
You mean the gene expert?
No, the RNA test kit that's just been come up with by Nigeria's government.
Oh, well, I don't understand. I read somewhere that a Nigerian discovered the RNA, which were going to be used for manufacture of extraction kits. Is that the one you are talking about?
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's just recent. So if we are able to, once it's validated, like it's done now, and we are able to, get the commercial manufacturing of it, it will also
see a likelihood of that evolving into something where it can be available commercially, so people can buy these things themselves, test themselves, and confirm whether or not they have the disease?
No. It means it will provide, it will make more available reagents. It's just one aspect of the reagents that we need for the present test that we are doing. So it will help to resolve the issue of lack of reagents, not just for Nigeria, but
okay. Let me just quickly, touch on this. We're counting down to election in Edo State, and of course, INEC has released some form of guideline as to how elections will be conducted in the COVID-19 pandemic reality. But as a microbiologist, do you have any fears really ahead of these elections?
Well, the INEC has said that their hands are really tied by the Constitution. Otherwise, just like they postpone exams and all other things, and put on hold, it would have been better to shift the date. But since they don't have any option than to go ahead with the election, we need to follow the guidelines. So it's just part of the easing down of the lockdown. Social distancing, hand hygiene, and where possible, use of electronic means for campaign and all this stuff.
So you're confident that, going forward with these guidelines that INEC has put forward, there shouldn't be any cause for concern?
Yeah, people have to be careful. It's when you are alive that you can celebrate the victory of election. So those who are contesting are those who are their supporters, and those of us that will go ahead to vote, we ensure that we have to do it the way we go out for shopping in the market or going to the bank. So it means the timeline too will have to be extended so that people can have enough time to give adequate distancing and spacing.
You also said earlier that people weren't complying with the guidelines. What's the assurance that they will comply with these guidelines for the elections?
Yeah, it means those who enforce compliance, we need to be enhanced or increase where possible.
Well, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Dr. Osaritin, you are a consultant clinical microbiologist at UBTH. Thank you so much for your time and perspectives.
Thank you.